Hello, my lovely internet friends. I am not dead. Again, I know this is the second I'm not dead update. So sorry I disappeared. Things just got a little crazy and I finally got some time to actually breathe, and so I'm going to give you an update on my barely excusable reading assessment of these past couple months. So I have read 4 books since my last update, which was Like Water for Chocolate, which was, I think, the January book club pick for Emma's World Travel Book Club? Yeah, I've not had a lot of chance to read since then. However, I will say one of those 4 books is The Count of Monte Cristo, which is about 1,200 pages, and I did finish it in time for, again, Emma's book club with Carolyn. So that counts as like 4 books in my opinion. So really, I've read 8 books. I'm not doing too bad. Okay, but let's just go through them. The first one that I read was Across the Nightingale Floor, which is book 1 in a series of Tales of the Otori by Leon Hearn. I picked this one up in audiobook form on Chirp, which is my favorite audiobook platform. I love books set in Japan specifically, but in Eastern Asia, pretty much I'm kind of a sucker for those kinds of books. And so this tells the story of a young boy who is the lone survivor of a massacre in his rural village. And he is rescued by a wandering samurai who takes him in. Turns out this samurai is actually a lord, and this is before, I don't know the exact time period, I'm sure it says it in the book, but I believe this is before the shogunate, so it's before the warring areas were brought under control and into a peaceful situation under the shogunate. So you have the factions of the different territories all vying for power, and he is adopted by the Otori family. And part of the reason why is because, one, the samurai who finds him, who runs into him as he's fleeing from his village, is just a good person. He's just a decent human being. So the other reason, though, is that this young boy looks very, very, very much like the samurai's brother, who was killed a few years ago in one of these civil wars, these clashes between feudal lords, basically. And so, you know, it kind of tugs at his heartstrings when he sees this boy literally running for his life. Takes him into protection, officially adopts him, and so he becomes a member of the Otori family. But along the way, they discover he's actually from a clan of people with special abilities. Specifically, he's from like the main family of this clan that has the most special abilities. So he has the ability he has incredibly heightened hearing, so he can hear the movements, the heartbeats of other people. So, you know, he can kind of map things out in his mind based on just what he hears. So he is a great asset to the Otori family in protecting their liege lord, as well as getting revenge on the family that destroyed his village and is an enemy of the Otori family. His abilities also include kind of creating like a duplicate vision of himself that fools other people into thinking he's still in one place when he's really in another. Those kinds of things. And it follows 2 main storylines. It follows his story along with Lord Otori, but it also follows the storyline of a young girl, at least in this first book, that he falls in love with. She is a member of another noble family that wants to ally with the Otori family, but she is kept prisoner in an enemy's main city to maintain the peace. It's one of those swapping of essentially hostages, but they're supposed to be treated well. They're members of noble families, etc. So it follows her story and then his story. And so it has 2 different narrators, which I think is a really good choice because hearing it from a girl's perspective, a young girl trying to grow up and survive in this hostile environment, and then hearing it from a young boy who is growing up and trying to survive in his completely new foreign world as well, it comes off better having 2 different narrators. So I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4-star. I don't think the writing was really 4-star, but the setting and the atmosphere, the way that the author brought out the emotions of the characters and their motivations, I think was very well done. I'm honestly not a huge fan of the voices for the narration. Not the voices, but the way that they read it. Some of their cadence felt a little bit off to me. And I listened to it at just 1 times speed because partly of those cadence issues that when sped up felt a little bit even more strange. But that being said, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. It's more of like a good time kind of story than one that like I'm gonna analyze to death and pick apart and everything. So for me, it was still a 4-star enjoyment, even if I don't think it was like a 4-star as far as like academic perspective of it. And I will probably be continuing with the series, which is interesting because I'm not really much on series. So this will be interesting. I can't wait to read the next book and see what I think. Okay, the next one I read was An Indiscreet Princess by Georgie Blaylock. This is a historical fiction, but it's a retelling of the life of Queen Victoria's most rebellious and artistically talented daughter, Princess Louise. It's very much about a real person, and it is delving, I believe, I have not really spent that much time looking it up, but I believe it is rebuilding her life, this fictionalized version of it, based on as much fact as possible. So it feels very real. And, you know, there's times, dates, places, all of these were real people, real events that happened. And this is the imagining of what it was like in that moment for these people. Through the course of the story, you really come to know who Louise is as a person because it's very personal. It's not just she did this and she did this and she had this talent and she did this sculpture and, you know, she did this drawing it really was her emotions and her motivations behind everything. Her wanting freedom from her mother, Queen Victoria. By the time the novel starts, Prince Albert had already died, and so there's this pall over the entire royal family, the royal court, and she is, you know, she's like, it's been years. Why are we all still wearing black? Why can't, you know, I'm never gonna be on the throne. I'm like 4 or 5 children back. I have no interest in marrying a prince in another country, but I have this incredible artistic talent and drive and passion for art and for beauty and for expression. And so she feels very stifled and suffocated by her mother, Queen Victoria. And so she butts heads with her very drastically over the years. And so it explores that, and it explores an artist with a passion for art and a passion for life that has to fight for just the ability to do their art, not even to do it for the world to see, but to simply be able to do it and enjoy it. You know, she was indulged, especially by her father, to pursue her artistic talents, but her mother is like, okay, you're old enough now to either get married or, you know, double down and help me with my royal duties. And, you know, basically by being her mother's secretary, which is like the last thing on earth she wants to do. I found this book incredibly, I'm not going to say entertaining, but engaging in the way that she felt so real. And the people that she interacted with, her artist friends, and her fight to actually be able to go to the art school that her father had really helped get on its feet, to train future artists. And she had to fight to be able to attend it and had to use her family and her political influence to kind of call in favors to help sway her mother's mind to make it her mother think it was her idea to send her, because nobody's going to tell Queen Victoria to do anything unless it was her idea, kind of a thing. And it was just a very real human portrait of her life and her struggle and her facing, you know, the threat of marriage, because she did not want to marry other than, you know, by love, the person that she fell in love with. And for as much as her mother would understand that part of her, because her mother very, very much loved her husband, Prince Albert, it was also a marriage that could happen at that time because of Albert's station in life, whereas Louise falls in love with a lowly artist. So she's never going to have that opportunity to marry the man that she's in love with, but she doesn't even care so much about that so long as she can find ways to be with him. And so it really explores the passions of this one person in her life, in love, in art, especially sculpture. It is her very, very first love. She's also an accomplished drawer, and I believe she does some painting, but really sculpture is where her talents and her passions lie, and it is also looked down upon as one of the least profitable or favorable artistic expressions of women because it is so messy, and it is, you know, considered more of man's artistic work. And I gave this 4 stars because I really just thoroughly enjoyed the way that she was brought to life. She was so sympathetic. And for as much as she battled against her mother throughout this novel, it managed to make Queen Victoria a real person in it as well, instead of just this stoic historical figure that everybody just has kind of a one-note idea of. But that was developed. You know, at first Queen Victoria is exactly who you think she is going to be in this book. But as Louise develops and grows into herself and fights more and more for her own identity, she begins to understand her mother more so, because she comes to find out that her and her mother are probably the closest personality-wise out of all of her siblings versus her mother. And it's really interesting that it humanizes Queen Victoria along the way as well. She's never a particularly sympathetic character or person, but you do come to understand that that is partly by her own choice and by design because of her rank and her role in life, and her feeling like she can only go so far. She can only give so much room for her children based on duty to role and to country. Whether you agree with that or not, you know, is obviously a completely different discussion. But I think it was very well handled to the point where you understand her as a character, even if she's not very dominant on the page. She is the force that is always being pushed against by Louise. And it's just, I think it was very well done in making her not just this blockade, but turning her into a person with feelings and emotions who is also looking for a human connection, but is incredibly limited in who she can connect with and how much. Count of Monte Cristo we'll get to in a second. But the last book that I finished was Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. This, I just sort of ran across. How did I come across this? I think it was in Chirp. It was like one of their daily deals, and it was like $1 or $2. And I read the summary of it and I was kind of intrigued. So I'm going to read the summary because I'm not going to do it justice. In an isolated castle deep in the Austrian forest, Laura leads a solitary life with only her ailing father for company, until one moonlit night a horse-drawn carriage crashes into view carrying an unexpected guest, the beautiful Carmilla. So begins a feverish friendship between Laura and her mysterious, entrancing companion. But as Carmilla becomes increasingly strange and volatile, prone to eerie nocturnal wanderings, Laura finds herself tormented by nightmares and growing weaker by the day. Predating Dracula by 26 years, Carmilla is the original vampire story, steeped in sexual tension and gothic romance. It's incredibly short. It was only a couple hours long, I think, for the reading of it. And it was really interesting to see it through the lens of, this actually was before Dracula came out by 26 years. So in that sense, it's very familiar in the lore of what a lot of us expect of vampire stories, especially from that time period. But it's interesting that this is probably the beginnings of that. This is where the lore really came from. But most people think primarily of Dracula because I think that was the biggest success as far as these stories. I am not much in the terms of like supernatural stories are really not my thing. I 99% of the time will avoid them. I have read Dracula. I don't like, in general though, I don't do vampire stories or werewolves or ghosts or zombies. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't like the undead. I don't like it. It creeps me out. I get nightmares very, very easily. It's just stuff I usually don't mess with. I really read Carmilla because I was interested to see, having read Dracula, what was this story going to be like? And a lot of times with the early works of something like Dracula or Frankenstein, it's not a supernatural story for the sake of being a supernatural story. It is a commentary and a criticism on a lot of societal and cultural things through the lens of something else. And so that's how I approached Carmilla. And it was very interesting to see how this female character was talked about, and the fact that, of course, all these horrible things happening, there's nothing that could be the fault of this beautiful young woman, because beautiful people can't do horrible things. Beautiful women can't be capable of atrocities. And to me, that is kind of the lens that I was at least looking at it through. I don't know if that was the author's intent, but it was something that was very striking, that this creature, whose name barely changed throughout the centuries, it's basically like an anagram of Carmilla. I think the original name was Camrilla, I think. Like, you switch the R and the M, something like that. I mean, it's incredibly similar. And, it had passed into lore and everything. These horrible, suspicious things that were happening in the area. Nobody could bring themselves to think something that is incredibly, not obvious, but very suspicious in this person. It can't be her fault, because what would a beautiful 20-year-old, be doing at night when they disappear and then like a young boy is found dead the next day? Like, of course it can't be her. So from that aspect, I thought it was actually really interesting. It is kind of a slow burn, but considering it's a short story, it's not slow for very long, but it still somehow manages to feel kind of slow at first. To me, it was a little bit slower, I think, than I expected, considering I'm looking at the time going like, you got like 30 minutes to wrap this up. Where are you, But it does ramp up. I'm not gonna lie, I was very tired when I listened to this, and so I did fall asleep for a little bit of it, but I did wake up before the end sequence. So I was a little confused at first, because when I fell asleep, everything was fine. And then when I woke up, everybody was hunting Carmilla at this point. And I'm like, I was not asleep for that long. It was like maybe 20 minutes. So yeah, once you get there, it does finally ramp up. Apparently, if enough atrocities happen, beautiful women can then become suspect. Go figure. I gave this, what did I give this? I gave this 3 stars, partly because, I should be more generous because I did fall asleep, and so I can't judge the full story completely, but for what it was, I feel like it was too short. I think it could have done a lot more had it doubled its length, and I say that still saying that with doubled its length, it would still be quite a short story. But I think it was interesting. And if you are interested in the lens of something like that from the perspective of the male gaze and what it chooses to see or not, or just interested in what was probably a huge, huge, huge inspiration for Dracula, along with folklore and things, it might be worth picking it up. Like I said, it's extremely short, so it's not really going to be a big investment of your time. So if that's what you're interested in, go do it. Finally, The Count of Monte Cristo. And if you are one of my regulars, you'll probably know that I think I talk about this book like every 3rd video, because I am ridiculously obsessed. And as Emma said in her vlog, which literally made me cry multiple times because I was just so happy that she read it and that she was loving it, I would commit crimes for this man. I would become a war criminal. Yeah. And while going through my notes for this, because I also have a notebook over here that I'm not going to show you that has handwritten notes about the things that I also wrote in the book, but just more expanded. As I was going through that, I found things that I did not tab or highlight. So I've been adding to this, even though I finished this like 2 months ago now. The saddest part is this. The book is falling apart because I went so hard at it. Also, from watching Emma's video, this apparently is not a very reputable translation, and she said that the language in the Penguin Classics clothbound edition is much better, which I think is really interesting, because I thought that this was fantastically written. Obviously, this was originally written in French, and so if you're going to get the most out of it, it needs to be translated well, not just translated word for word, but translated in the spirit that it was originally written. Translation is an art and a science. You cannot just translate word for word in something, because even if you get everything right, and even if by some miracle the grammar matches properly, which it won't, you're going to have a saying in French that means absolutely nothing in English. And so you have to, when you're translating, you have to translate the idea and the spirit behind the words along with the words themselves. And apparently this is subpar at that. So I will be getting the clothbound edition or another edition from that translation, because that is widely considered, I guess, to be one of the better translations. So basically my favorite book in the world can only get better, and I'm very excited about that. But that's it. I'm not going to talk about this anymore in this video, because part of the reason why I've disappeared for so long is I am making a video about this. It is going to be very long, probably, and I'm trying to figure out if I should break it into chapters, so like different videos or different episodes, because I have so many themes. So these are color-coded, these are not random. I'm basically writing a thesis. I never went to college, so I don't know how to write a thesis. I've never had to, and I never thought I would, especially by choice, but after rereading this, I have so many thoughts on it and so many feels about it. I have to write it down. I cannot just simply leave it tabbed. I have to put all of my thoughts in some kind of order. And so I've been writing them all out, and it's basically turning into a thesis on, or a dissertation on, The Count of Monte Cristo. It is about 20 pages long right now, and I think I've only covered 3 of the colors, because I'm also delving into, as I'm going, like so many things pop into my head and I'm like, I have to get this down. And so I have like scattered notes throughout it, and then I'll be cutting and pasting and organizing later. But I'm diving as deep as I can reasonably into the different characters and the punishments that go on, and the motivations of these people, and how it ties into the overall story and the overall themes of the book, and yada yada yada. So yeah, it's 20 pages long, and I probably have another conservatively 10, generously maybe 20 pages that I will end up typing. That is partly why I've been gone, because I'm like, okay, I'm barely reading. I am focused way too much on just one book, and I wanted to devote more time to building that video. But it has also become quite overwhelming for me because I have a million other things going on in my life. I've been incredibly busy. So here's what I'm thinking. Let me know in the comments down below, suggestions, vote on my methods, whatever you want to do. I'm thinking filming the whole thing and breaking it into episodes based on, what makes sense as themes and comparisons, to keep them shorter and more reasonable, making a specific playlist for it, but then also uploading the entire thing. So if somebody literally wants to spend an entire day at home doing something, or driving in the car and they want to listen to something, they can have a 5-hour video that they can just listen to the entire thing. I actually I like the longer format myself for when I watch things. One of my favorite content creators is Arlo. He is a Blue Monster video game Nintendo creator commentator. Adore him. Go check him out. Arlo, A-R-L-O. His content is all chef's kiss. But he did a big fat Breath of the Wild review that was originally released episodically, kind of. I never watched any of the episodes, any of the individuals. When he released that 3-hour Breath of the Wild review, I ate that up. And I have watched it from start to finish probably 4 times now. And why I've watched it in large part many other times, because I'm like, I just need Arlo. I just need Arlo in the background with Zelda, 2 of my favorite things now. Well, Zelda's always been one of my favorite things, but Arlo is new to me. So yeah. So I'm thinking of doing it both ways, episodic and then the full if somebody's interested. Let me know what you think. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Give me a raspberry. I don't know. Just stop and say hello. So that's that. And I'm also going to try to fix the pages that are missing. There's some bookbinding glue and some stuff I guess I can get. You know, considering this is a pretty cheap paperback copy, I wouldn't normally, but the fact that this is my annotated copy, I don't want to lose anything. Thank you so much for watching and catching up with me. I will hopefully have more updates soon, and I hope you guys are doing well. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you next time.